For millennia, Earth was erased from every star map. No trade routes, no transmissions, no record of its people. The galaxy called it a quarantine, a necessary silence, but legends endured, of a world that once burned too bright, too fierce. Now the seals are breaking, and the stars are remembering why they were afraid of us. Because some truths can't stay buried forever. The awakening. The detection array on Station Vigilance had been monitoring the same empty space for 3,000 years. Nothing ever changed. The Sol quarantine zone remained perfectly silent, perfectly dark, perfectly sealed. Until today. Sensor operator Thalen felt his secondary heart skip when the alarm triggered. The sound was so unexpected that for several seconds he simply stared at the console, unable to process what he was seeing. A signal. From inside the zone. Impossible. His clawed hand trembled as he reached for the emergency communication channel. Within minutes, the alert had traveled across 70 star systems to reach the Galactic Sovereignty headquarters on Centralis Prime. Within an hour, every major species in the galaxy knew that the impossible had happened. The seal on the Sol system had been breached from the inside. High Chancellor Morven stood before the assembled Sovereignty Council, her scaled skin pale with something the younger species might mistake for fear. The elders knew better. This was dread. Pure, ancient dread that came from living long enough to remember why the seal had been placed. "The signal is repeating," she announced, her voice steady despite everything. "It is a standard first contact greeting in 73 languages, including several that have been dead for millennia. They are asking for communication." Council member Jex of the Kalthari leaned forward, his insectoid features arranged in confusion. "High Chancellor, forgive my ignorance, but I have studied the restricted archives. The Sol system was sealed 5,000 years ago because the species inside, humans they were called, were deemed too dangerous. Yet the records contain almost no details. What exactly made them dangerous?" Morven's eyes closed briefly. "That is precisely the problem, young Jex. The original council decided the truth itself was too dangerous to record. They left only warnings. Do not unseal. Do not contact. Do not remember. That's absurd," Admiral Cross of the Vryn Dominion interjected. His warrior race had conquered 14 systems through sheer military might. The idea of a danger too great to even document seemed ridiculous. What could one species possibly do that warranted erasing their existence from history? "They solved problems," came a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Elder historian Quen shuffled forward, her ancient form supported by anti-gravity assists. At nearly 8,000 years old, she was one of the few beings alive who had access to the deepest archives. "I have spent centuries studying the fragments that remain. Before the seal, humanity made contact with 12 species. Within 50 years, 11 of those species had undergone radical cultural revolutions. The 12th went extinct. They were conquerors then," Cross said with satisfaction. "Warriors. We can handle warriors." "No," Quen said softly. "They were helpers. That was what made them terrifying." The silence that followed was broken by another alert. The signal from Sol had changed. Now it contained images, mathematical proofs, demonstrations of technology, and a simple message in flawless galactic standard. "We know you can hear us. We know you remember. We would like to talk about why you were afraid." 3 days later, Ambassador Vena found herself approaching the Sol system, aboard the diplomatic vessel Careful Approach. The name had never seemed more appropriate. She was a Lysian, a species known for empathy and diplomatic skill. If anyone could make first contact with a species sealed away for 5 millennia, it would be her. Except she had no idea what she was flying into. "Ambassador," her pilot called out. "You need to see this." The view screen showed what should have been a dead system. 5,000 years of complete isolation should have meant regression, possibly extinction. Instead, Vena saw a thriving civilization that made her breath catch. Massive orbital structures ringed the inner planets. Energy signatures indicated fusion reactors, antimatter containment, and technologies she couldn't even identify. The third planet, Earth, blazed with lights. "They didn't just survive," Vena whispered. "They flourished." A new signal reached them. "Welcome, Ambassador Vena of Lycia. Please proceed to coordinates being transmitted. We have prepared a meeting space." The voice was warm, female, speaking Lycian with perfect accent and inflection. Vena felt a chill. How did they know her language, her name? Lycians had only joined the sovereignty 2,000 years ago, long after the seal. The coordinates led them to a massive station orbiting Earth's moon. As they docked, Vena noticed something odd. The station's design incorporated elements from dozens of species: Vrin angular efficiency, Kalthari organic curves, Lesian harmonic proportions. It was as if someone had studied every race in the galaxy and created something that would make all of them feel welcome. The airlock opened, and Vena stepped through to meet humanity. Captain Marcus Rivera waited in the reception hall, his dark eyes calm and measuring. He was tall by human standards, his brown skin marked with age lines that suggested wisdom rather than frailty. Two other humans stood with him, a younger woman with bright eyes and an older man whose gray hair matched his serious expression. "Ambassador Vena," Marcus said. Extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting Vena had read about in the ancient files. "Thank you for coming. I'm Captain Marcus Rivera, United Earth Diplomatic Corps. This is Dr. Sarah Chen, our xenosociology specialist, and this is James Walsh, our historical liaison." Vena carefully took his hand, noting the controlled strength, the warmth of human skin. "Captain Rivera, I must confess this situation is highly unusual. The sovereignty sealed your system 5,000 years ago. You should not have been able to break that seal." Marcus smiled, and it was a genuine expression that made Vena uncomfortable because she found herself wanting to smile back. "We didn't break it, Ambassador. We understood it. There's a difference," he gestured to a conference room. Inside, holographic displays showed complex mathematics and engineering diagrams. The seal was a quantum barrier, phase-locked to prevent any form of faster-than-light travel in or out of our system. Brilliant design, actually. It took us 3,000 years to fully understand it. "If it took 3,000 years to understand, how did you breach it?" Vena asked. "We didn't," Dr. Chen said, her voice enthusiastic. "We worked with it. The seal was designed to keep us in and everyone else out, but it was still permeable to certain electromagnetic frequencies. We've been listening to the galaxy for 5 millennia, learning your languages, studying your cultures, watching your development." Vena felt her empathic senses reeling. "You've been watching us? All of us? Every public broadcast, every commercial transmission, every piece of information that crossed the barrier," James Walsh confirmed. "We know the sovereignty better than most of its own citizens. We know about the Vrin expansion wars, the Kalthari Renaissance, the Lesian Enlightenment. We know about the 47 member species and the 6,000 colony worlds. But why?" Vena asked, struggling to understand. "Why spend 5,000 years studying species that imprisoned you?" Marcus looked at her directly, and his expression was complex. Sadness mixed with determination and something else Vena couldn't quite name. "Because we needed to understand why you were so afraid of us. And after 5,000 years of study, we finally figured it out." He activated another display. It showed historical records from before the seal. Humans making contact with other species. The records were fragmentary, but patterns emerged. Wherever humans went, change followed. Not conquest, not destruction, change. "Before the seal, we encountered the Praxis Collective," Marcus explained. "They had a rigid caste system that had existed for 10,000 years. We didn't attack it. We didn't even criticize it. We just showed them alternatives, asked questions. Within 20 years, their entire social structure had transformed. They chose to change because they saw possibilities they'd never considered." "The Vilmari Union had been locked in a civil war for centuries," Sarah added. "We arrived, studied both sides, and proposed a solution that incorporated elements from both factions in a way neither had imagined. The war ended in 6 months. The Korthan Empire faced an environmental collapse," James continued. "Every species they'd consulted said it was irreversible. We found 17 different approaches they hadn't tried. 14 of them worked." Vena listened with growing understanding and growing horror. "You solve problems. We solve problems," Marcus confirmed. "It's what humans do. We look at what everyone says is impossible and ask, but what if it isn't? We try unconventional approaches. We combine ideas from different sources. We fail repeatedly until we succeed. It's in our nature." "And that's why they sealed you away," Vena said slowly. "Not because you were violent. Because you were helpful. Because we were disruptive," Marcus corrected gently. "Every species we helped began to question their own assumptions. If humans could solve problems we said were impossible, what other impossibilities might not be so impossible? Your elder races had built a stable, predictable galaxy. We represented chaos. Beneficial chaos, perhaps, but chaos nonetheless. He pulled up another display, this one showing projections and models. The Sovereignty Council ran simulations. They predicted that within 500 years of human contact, 40% of galactic species would undergo major cultural changes. Within 1,000 years, 60%. We didn't threaten your lives. We threatened your certainty. Vena absorbed this, her empathic senses telling her that Marcus was being completely honest. So they locked you away rather than face change. They locked away the possibility of change, Sarah said. And honestly, we understand why. Change is frightening, especially when you can't control or predict it. But now you've broken out, Vena pointed out. The signal you sent will change everything regardless. Marcus nodded. That's why we need to talk, because there's something happening in the galaxy right now. Something we've been monitoring for the past 200 years. Something that requires exactly the kind of disruptive problem-solving that made you afraid of us in the first place. He changed the display one final time, and Vena felt her hearts freeze. The images showed cascade failures in multiple systems, planetary ecosystems collapsing. The spread pattern was clear. Whatever this was, it was accelerating. The withering, Vena whispered. You know about the withering. We've watched it spread to 47 worlds, James said grimly. We've seen the Sovereignty's attempts to stop it. Quarantines, environmental interventions, population relocations. Nothing has worked. Because you're treating the symptom, not the cause, Marcus said. And the cause is something the Sovereignty doesn't want to admit. Something your science says is impossible. He looked at Vena with absolute seriousness. The withering isn't a natural phenomenon, Ambassador. It's artificial. It's a weapon, and we know how to stop it. Vena stared at him, her mind reeling. That's impossible. The withering has been studied by our best scientists for a century. If it were artificial, we would know. Your best scientists are working within established paradigms, Sarah explained. They're looking for natural causes because that's what makes sense. But humans specialize in looking at problems sideways. We noticed patterns in the spread that only make sense if someone is deliberately targeting specific planetary types with specific ecosystem vulnerabilities. If you know this, why wait? Vena demanded. If worlds are dying, why send a signal asking permission to talk? Why not just tell us? Because that's exactly what got us sealed away last time, Marcus said quietly. We helped without being asked. We solved problems without considering whether people wanted them solved. We were so busy fixing things that we never stopped to ask if we should. He stood, moving to the window that showed Earth below. We spent 5,000 years alone, Ambassador. 5,000 years to think about what we did wrong, and we realized our mistake. We thought helping was always good. We thought solving problems was always right. We never understood that sometimes people need to struggle with their own problems. That's how they grow. But people are dying, Vena protested. Yes, Marcus agreed, his voice heavy. And that's why we're offering help now. But we're offering, not imposing. We're asking permission, not assuming we know best. We broke our silence because we believe we can save lives. But we won't do it unless the Sovereignty asks us to. Unless you choose to accept help from the species you feared enough to erase from history. He turned back to face her. So that's why you're here, Ambassador Vena. Not to negotiate our freedom. Not to argue about the past. You're here to make a choice. The Sovereignty can continue as it has, trying to solve the withering within the bounds of conventional thinking. Or you can accept help from humanity, knowing that our help will change things in ways you cannot predict or control. That's not a fair choice, Vena said. No, Marcus agreed. But it's an honest one. And that's all we can offer you. Honesty about what we are and what accepting our help means. Vena looked at the humans before her. 5,000 years of isolation had not made them bitter or vengeful. Instead, they had used that time to learn, to grow, to understand not just how to solve problems, but when to offer solutions. They had learned wisdom, but would the Sovereignty see it that way? Or would they see only the threat that had justified the seal in the first place? I need to report back to the Council, Vena said finally. They need to make this decision. We understand, Marcus said. Take all the time you need. We've waited 5,000 years. We can wait a little longer. As Vena returned to her ship, her mind churned with questions. Humanity offered salvation from the withering, but accepting that salvation meant accepting change. It meant admitting that the sealed species might understand things the Sovereignty did not. It meant questioning 5,000 years of certainty. Behind her, Captain Marcus Rivera watched the diplomatic ship depart and allowed himself a small, sad smile. Humanity had learned patience. They had learned restraint. They had learned to offer help rather than impose it, but they had not learned how to make people unafraid of change. That perhaps was impossible even for humanity. The real test was about to begin. The truth unveiled, the Galactic Sovereignty Council chamber had never been so divided. For 3 days, representatives from 47 species had debated the human question. The arguments grew heated, the positions hardened, and no consensus emerged. Ambassador Vena stood at the central podium, exhausted from repeating her report for the dozenth time. Around her, council members argued in a dozen languages, their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Order. High Chancellor Morven's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The chamber fell silent. We have heard Ambassador Vena's report. We have reviewed the evidence. We have debated every angle. Now we must decide. Do we accept humanity's offer of help or do we refuse? Admiral Cross of the Vryn Dominion rose, his armored form imposing. I say we refuse. The humans claim they can stop the withering, but they offer no proof. They demand we simply trust them. Trust the species we sealed away because they were too dangerous. This is madness. People are dying, Council Member Jex countered, his young voice passionate. 47 worlds affected. Billions of lives at risk. If humanity can help, don't we have an obligation to at least listen? At what cost? Demanded Representative Sulara of the Methian Confederacy. Her crystalline form pulsed with agitation. 5,000 years ago, our ancestors decided humanity was too dangerous to remain free. They made that choice for a reason. Who are we to overturn centuries of wisdom? Elder historian Quen rose slowly, and the chamber quieted out of respect for her age. Perhaps, she said carefully, it is time we understood what that reason truly was. I propose we access the Forbidden Archive, the complete unredacted records of humanity's first contact with the galaxy. The chamber erupted again. The Forbidden Archive was legendary, a data vault containing information deemed too dangerous for general access. Only the High Chancellor and the eldest historians knew the access codes. The archive was sealed for a reason, Morven said, her voice tight. So were the humans, Quen replied. And now they stand at our doorstep offering help we desperately need. We cannot make an informed decision based on fragmentary warnings and ancient fears. We must know the truth. After a long silence, Morven nodded. Very well. We will access the archive. All council members will witness what our ancestors chose to hide. 2 hours later, the council reconvened in the archive chamber deep beneath Centralis Prime. The room was ancient, its walls lined with crystalline data storage that predated most current civilizations. At its center stood a holographic projector that had not been activated in millennia. Morven placed her hand on the security panel. What you are about to see has been hidden for 5,000 years. Our ancestors believed this knowledge was too dangerous to share. After today, you will understand why. The hologram activated, and the council found themselves witnessing the past. The first image showed a blue and green world, Earth, beautiful and thriving. The date stamp read 5,287 years ago. A sovereignty exploration vessel, the Pathfinder, approached the system detecting signs of early space travel. First contact protocols initiated, a voice narrated. Species designation, human, classification, emerging spacefaring civilization, technological level, early fusion power, primitive FTL capability, estimated time to full galactic integration, 500 years. The scene shifted to show the first meeting. Humans and aliens greeting each other with cautious optimism. The humans were diverse in appearance, different skin colors, different features, different languages, but they shared something the observers had noted, intense curiosity. Initial contact proceeded according to standard protocols, the narration continued. Humans demonstrated expected traits, curiosity, adaptability, moderate aggression levels within normal parameters. Trade agreements established. Cultural exchange programs initiated. No immediate concerns noted. But then the record showed something else. Within 6 months of contact, human scientists had made breakthroughs that puzzled the sovereignty observers. Technologies that should have taken decades to develop emerged in months. How? A Vryn military advisor had asked in the recording. How do they advance so quickly? The answer came from a human scientist during a recorded interview. Dr. Elizabeth Okafor, the file identified her. "We look at problems differently," she explained to her alien interviewer. "Where you see established rules, we see suggestions. Where you see impossible, we see not yet solved. It's not that we're smarter. We just question assumptions more readily." The record shifted to show the Praxis Collective, the rigid caste-based society Marcus had mentioned. Before human contact, Praxis society had remained unchanged for 10,000 years. Roles were assigned at birth. Questioning one's place was considered mental illness. Then humans arrived as traders and observers. They did not criticize. They did not judge. They simply asked questions. Why must someone born in the worker caste remain a worker? A human anthropologist asked during a recorded cultural exchange. Because that is the natural order, a Praxis official responded. Each caste has its role. The system is perfect. Perfect for whom? The human asked gently. I notice the ruling caste makes the laws about who belongs in which caste. The question was simple, innocent even, but it planted a seed. The hologram showed what followed. Praxis citizens began asking their own questions. Why was the system arranged this way? Who benefited? What alternatives existed? Within 2 years, the caste system had crumbled, replaced by a merit-based society. The Praxis government formally protested to the sovereignty, the narration explained. They claimed humanity had deliberately destabilized their civilization. Investigation revealed humans had taken no direct action. They had simply asked questions. But those questions had transformed a society. The record showed similar patterns across multiple species. The Vilmari Civil War ended when humans proposed combining governance systems in ways neither faction had considered. The Korthan environmental crisis was solved using technologies and approaches that violated established scientific consensus but worked anyway. In every case, the narration continued, humanity solved problems other species considered unsolvable. But their solutions came with a cost. Every species they helped began to think differently, to question more, to see possibilities where they had previously seen only limitations. The hologram shifted to show a Sovereignty Emergency Council session from 5,000 years ago. A younger Morven stood among them, already ancient even then. Humanity is spreading intellectual chaos, one council member argued in the recording. Species that were stable for millennia are now in upheaval. Not violent upheaval, but cultural transformation happening faster than societies can adapt. They mean well, another counselor countered. They cause no intentional harm. They simply solve problems in ways we do not anticipate. That is precisely why they are dangerous, Morven's younger self said. They do not mean to disrupt, but disruption follows them like a shadow. We ran projections. If humanity continues unrestricted contact with the galaxy, within 500 years, 70% of our species will have undergone major cultural transformations. Our children will look at their ancestors and barely recognize them. Is that bad? Asked a counselor. Change is natural. Growth is natural. Uncontrolled change is catastrophic, Morven replied. Societies need time to evolve gradually. Humanity accelerates that process beyond what most species can handle. Some will thrive. Others will collapse. The uncertainty is unacceptable. The hologram showed the debate that followed. Hours of argument, proposals and counter-proposals. Finally, the vote. By a narrow margin, the council decided to seal humanity in their home system. Not as punishment, as protection. Protection for the galaxy from beneficial chaos. The final scene showed a human delegation receiving the news. Their faces showed shock, hurt, and incomprehension. We only wanted to help, one human ambassador said, tears in her eyes. We only wanted to solve problems. That is why you must be contained, the sovereignty representative had replied. Not all problems should be solved. Not all change is beneficial. You cannot understand that, and that is what makes you dangerous. The hologram faded. The council chamber remained silent. Elder Quen spoke first. Now you understand. Our ancestors did not seal humanity because they were evil or violent. They sealed them because they were helpful in ways the galaxy was not ready to accept. But were they right? Jex asked quietly. Were our ancestors right to choose stagnation over change? They chose stability over chaos, Admiral Cross said, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. Can you blame them? 47 worlds are dying, Vena reminded them. The withering spreads. Our conventional approaches have failed. Perhaps we need unconventional solutions. Or perhaps, Sulara suggested, humanity engineered the withering themselves to force us to release them. The accusation hung in the air until Quen laughed, a bitter, tired sound. To what end? They broke their own seal. They could have simply left without asking permission. Instead, they announced themselves and offered help. Does that sound like a species playing manipulative games? Morven stood, commanding attention. The question before us is not whether our ancestors were right 5,000 years ago. The question is what we choose now. We can refuse humanity's help and continue struggling against the withering with methods that have repeatedly failed. Or we can accept their help, knowing it will change us in ways we cannot predict. What do the humans ask in return? Cross demanded. Release from the quarantine? Territory? Resources? Nothing, Vena said. I asked Captain Rivera directly. He said if we accept their help stopping the withering, they ask only that we make it official, that we acknowledge we chose to accept their assistance. They want legitimacy, not payment. They want us to accept responsibility for the change they bring, Solara realized. Clever. If we ask for their help, we cannot later blame them for disrupting our society. Is that wrong? Jex asked. Shouldn't we take responsibility for our own choices? The debate continued for hours. Representatives called their homeworlds, consulted with leaders, argued among themselves. The divide remained sharp, those who feared change versus those who feared the withering more. Finally, Morven called for a vote. All in favor of accepting humanity's offer to help stop the withering, make your choice known. The voting crystals illuminated slowly. Green for acceptance, red for refusal. For long moments the split appeared even. Then one by one, undecided members made their choices. The final tally appeared. 25 green. 22 red. Acceptance won by the narrowest possible margin. The decision is made, Morven announced. We will accept humanity's help. Ambassador Vena, you will return to Sol System and inform Captain Rivera that the Sovereignty requests their assistance. We will face the consequences of this choice together. 3 days later, Vena stood once again aboard a human station, this time accompanied by a team of Sovereignty scientists and military observers. Captain Rivera greeted them with the same warm smile, but Vena noticed something different in his eyes. Relief, perhaps. Or vindication. The Sovereignty accepts your offer, Vena said formally. We request your assistance in stopping the withering. We're honored to help, Marcus replied. Dr. Chen and her team have been preparing. We'll need access to the affected worlds and full scientific data on everything you've tried so far. You'll have it, Vena confirmed. But Captain, I must ask, how can you be certain you can stop something our best minds cannot? Sarah Chen stepped forward, her expression serious. Because we're not trying to stop a natural phenomenon, Ambassador. We're trying to stop a weapon, and we know who created it. The Sovereignty observers went rigid. You know who's responsible for the withering? We've known for 100 years, Sarah confirmed. We've been watching it spread, analyzing the patterns, tracing it back to its source. It wasn't easy. Whoever designed it covered their tracks well. She activated a display showing star maps with overlay patterns. The withering targets specific planet types with specific atmospheric compositions. It spreads through trade routes, hiding in organic cargo. It's designed to look natural, but there's a mathematical signature in its genetic structure, a pattern that only appears in artificially engineered organisms. Who? Demanded Admiral Cross, who had insisted on joining the delegation despite his vote against accepting human help. Who would do this? Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. We don't know if you're ready to hear this, Marcus said carefully. Tell us, Morven commanded via communication link. We accepted your help. That means accepting difficult truths. Sarah took a breath. The withering was created by the Sovereignty itself, specifically by a rogue research project initiated approximately 200 years ago. Project Stillness, it was called. The goal was to create a biological agent that could be used to terraform hostile worlds more efficiently. The implications hit like a physical blow. You're saying we did this to ourselves? Vena whispered. Not intentionally, Sarah clarified. The project was classified. Only a few knew about it. Something went wrong, either an accident or deliberate sabotage. The agent escaped containment and mutated beyond its original parameters. Instead of preparing worlds for habitation, It began killing them. Why didn't our scientists discover this? Cross demanded. Because they weren't looking for it, Sarah explained. You were searching for external threats, natural phenomena, or enemy weapons. You never considered that the threat might have come from within. It's a blind spot. Everyone has them, and you don't? Sulara challenged. We have different blind spots, Sarah admitted. But one advantage of being sealed away for 5,000 years is that we're external observers. We see your civilization from the outside. We notice patterns you might miss because they're too close to you. Marcus stepped forward. Here's what we propose. We can create a counteragent that will neutralize the withering. It will take approximately 6 months to manufacture and distribute to all affected worlds. But there's a condition. I knew it, Cross muttered. There's always a condition. Not a demand, Marcus corrected. A requirement for the solution to work. The counteragent needs to be administered by representatives from the affected worlds themselves. Not by us. If humans deploy it, the withering organism will adapt. It was designed to resist external solutions. But if the sovereignty's own people deploy it, the organism recognizes them as part of the original system and doesn't adapt. He looked at each observer in turn. You have to save yourselves. We can give you the tools, but you have to do the work. Vena understood suddenly. This was humanity's answer to the problem that had gotten them sealed away. They would not impose solutions. They would not take control. They would offer knowledge and step back. That's acceptable, she said. When can you begin? We already have, Sarah said with a slight smile. We've been manufacturing the counteragent for the past year, hoping you'd eventually ask for it. We'll need 3 weeks to finish production, and another 2 to transport it to staging areas. Your people can begin deployment immediately after. The efficiency was startling. The sovereignty had struggled for a century. Humans had prepared a solution in a year. How? Admiral Cross asked, and for the first time his voice held curiosity rather than suspicion. How do you think so differently? Marcus considered the question. It's not just thinking differently. It's permission to fail. Your civilization has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. You've built amazing stability. But stability breeds caution. You avoid risk because you have so much to lose. Humans are young. We fail constantly. We've destroyed ourselves dozens of times in our history. Wars, environmental collapse, plague. Each time we rebuilt. We learned that failure isn't the end. It's information. He gestured to Earth visible through the viewport. You sealed us away to preserve stability. And we spent 5,000 years learning that sometimes stability needs to be disrupted. That's not a criticism. It's just a different perspective. Over the following months, the sovereignty deployed the counteragent to all affected worlds. It worked exactly as humans predicted. The withering halted, reversed, and eventually disappeared entirely. Billions of lives were saved. But as Morven had predicted, accepting human help changed things. Scientists who had believed certain problems were unsolvable now questioned that assumption. Engineers began experimenting with approaches they'd previously dismissed. Philosophers debated whether stability was always desirable. The change was subtle but inexorable. Humanity had disrupted the galaxy again, but this time with permission. 6 months after the crisis ended, Ambassador Vena met with Captain Rivera one final time before humanity officially joined the sovereignty as a full member species. You knew this would happen, Vena said. You knew that even helping us on our terms would change us. Marcus nodded. Yes, change is inevitable when different perspectives meet. But there's a difference between forcing change and allowing it to happen naturally. We gave you tools. You chose how to use them. That choice matters. Our civilization will never be the same, Vena said, though she didn't sound entirely sad about it. No, Marcus agreed, but it will still be yours. That's what we learned in 5,000 years of isolation. Change doesn't erase identity unless you let it. The sovereignty will absorb what it finds useful from humanity and reject what doesn't fit. You'll change, but you'll change on your own terms. He smiled. Besides, you'll change us too. That's how it works. Cultures meeting, exchanging ideas, both becoming something new while remaining themselves. It's messier than isolation, more chaotic, but it's also more alive. Vena felt her empathic senses reaching out, touching the strange, optimistic, frustratingly hopeful presence that was humanity. They had spent 5 millennia learning patience, learning restraint, learning when to help and when to step back. But they had never stopped being what they fundamentally were. Problem solvers who refused to accept that any problem was truly unsolvable. Welcome to the Sovereignty. Captain Rivera, Vena said formally. Thank you, Ambassador, Marcus replied. We're looking forward to all the trouble we're going to cause. He was joking, mostly. But as Vena watched human ships begin leaving Sol System to join the wider galaxy, she knew he was also right. Humanity would cause trouble. They would ask uncomfortable questions. They would solve problems in unexpected ways. They would disrupt comfortable certainties. And perhaps, Vena thought, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Not conquerors or destroyers, but helpers who refused to let anyone believe that impossible meant impossible. The silence protocol was ended. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never quite be the same.